What's up, everyone? The UFC Atlantic City Fight Night card just wrapped up. Going to be going through that card, recapping it, breaking down some of the biggest moments, and then talking about what's going to be next for some of these fighters. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button. But I feel like we got to start off here with the main event. Manon Fiorot completely shutting out Erin Blanchfield. On paper, this looked like a super close matchup. Both these women were undefeated with 6 wins in the UFC. You had Fiorot bringing the striking, Blanchfield with the grappling. Very interesting stylistic matchup. We didn't really know who was going to win out. I did pick Fiorot, but I thought it would be very competitive. It really wasn't. Fiorot 50-45 to Erin Blanchfield in her backyard, and she just looked dominant all across the board. Obviously, the striking is where she did a lot of the damage. That's where she wanted to stay in this fight. But I think the more impressive part was that she was able to completely shut down the grappling of Erin Blanchfield. Blanchfield threw around Jessica Andrade. She's had some big wins in this division, and Fiorot was having none of it. The only time she was in danger the entire fight was when she initiated the grappling, took Erin Blanchfield down, but got put in a precarious situation with the guillotine. But outside of that, Fiorot had it on lock. I also think it was impressive that she showcased the 5-round cardio. That's something we hadn't seen before. Blanchfield was pushing a pace towards the end of the fight. Obviously, the fact that it stayed standing, I think, helped her. If Blanchfield was actually able to land takedowns early on, maybe Fiorot would have faded. But she is going to be a problem in this division. I know commentary was kind of talking about how she should push the pace a little bit more, try to go for a finish. And I get it, like from the fan perspective, maybe you want to have her go out there, risk it. But in my opinion, she hadn't fought 5 rounds since her 3rd pro fight. She's going against a very tough opponent. If Blanchfield is just going to be giving Fiorot rounds by running into her counters, Fiorot should have no responsibility to go out there and put herself in danger. It just doesn't make sense. Her job's to win the fight. She should be setting herself up here for a title shot against the winner of the trilogy between Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso, and she got that done. She should not have to fight again. I imagine what they're going to do is just have her weigh in as the backup. This is a division where I think Fiorot and Blanchfield had kind of already earned title shots. You also have Rose Namajunas, who could probably get a title shot off of one more win. I don't think you want to be losing these contenders while, Valentina and Alexa go back and forth. So I think Fiorot should wait for that shot, weigh in as the backup if they want her to, but she should be next for that flyweight title fight once the trilogy is completed. And then for Blanchfield, I don't think she loses much stock here. She is in this rough spot, though, where, the grappling didn't work against Manon Fiorot. The striking didn't look great. It raises some question marks on whether or not she's going to be able to compete with the Valentina Shevchenkos, the Alexa Grassos. She's still very young. There could definitely be some improvement moving forward. I wonder if she considers a move down to strawweight at 115. She's definitely not super big for the 125-pound division. She was really just out-muscled by Manon Fiorot. She looked like the far smaller woman. So I wonder if she does consider that, but even if she doesn't, I think she's going to be a top contender at whatever division she's at, and she should just continue to improve. Like I said, still very, very young. Now, pivoting over to the co-main event, we had Joaquin Buckley pretty much running through Vicente Luque. Somewhat competitive first round. I scored it for Buckley. Second round starts. Buckley's landing. He's moving all over the place, jumping side to side. It seemed like Luque didn't like it. Pulls guard, and then really just had nothing for Joaquin Buckley's ground and pound. Didn't try to threaten with submissions. Didn't really try to close his guard, lock up. It seemed like he was just, waiting for the ref to step in and finish it. It's kind of been a tough stretch here for Vicente Luque. You had the loss to Jeff Neal, where he eventually got his chin cracked. He had this legendary chin, got it cracked by Jeff Neal. Then he had the gross decision win over RDA. That was kind of just a big clinch fest. And then this fight, it was is he going to be, holding on? Is he not falling off? It didn't look great, and MMA is just so brutal. You never know when your peak is. Vicente Luque is 32 years old. A lot of fighters are heading into their prime at 32, and it seems like Vicente Luque's fallen off. I wouldn't be shocked if he retires after this fight. Maybe he comes back for, a little bit of an easier matchup, able to go out there, have some fun, but it definitely seems like Vicente Luque, the days of him being a top contender are over at this point, which is sad. He always goes out there, brings fun fights, but was just not able to get it done here against Joaquin Buckley. Before that fight, we had the return of Chris Weidman. He is back in the win column. And before we talk about, the win, or in quotes, the win, I do just want to talk about the eye pokes. So Chris Weidman did eye poke Bruno Silva on at least, I believe, 3 different occasions. 2 of them were actually stopped by the ref. They were acknowledged. And then the final one where he hit him with like the double eye poke into Bruno Silva hitting the deck, and then Weidman getting like the TKO finish at the time. So it was not great. The entire fight, it seemed like it was waiting to happen. When he was measuring his distance, there was no hand up. The hand was straight out there, right at Bruno Silva. So it wasn't shocking when he was racking up the eye pokes. And then obviously the finish, right? Bruno gets eye poked. He falls to the ground. I saw some people hating on Weidman for the post-fight, saying like you can't fall to the ground when you get eye poked. And I don't think that's him saying that it's not his fault that he was eye poking him. But there is some truth to it. I think he also fell on the second eye poke. And from my perspective, it seemed like Bruno Silva was kind of trying to get the ref to take a point, which I don't think is crazy. Like, he probably should have taken a point. I don't think that's like a crazy thing, but it did seem like he was looking for the point to be taken. So when you hit the deck, especially when Weidman did kind of land, I think it was the left hook behind the ear, it's just not a great look, and it led to the fight getting stopped. Now, they initially announced it as a TKO, which, it was BS, right? He went down because of the eye poke. He did not get hit clean. It should not have been a TKO. Then you have some weird communication where now the broadcast is saying that they ruled it a decision. And so I think the ruling of a decision is not a bad call, right? We've seen this before where if someone commits a foul in the 3rd round and the other fighter's not able to continue, they'll go to the scorecards where you have the 1st and 2nd round scored, and then they will score what has happened within the 3rd round. So in this situation, I don't think that's like the wrong call. I think it makes sense. The problem was that when they went to those scorecards, Chris Weidman was still somehow not deducted a point. You eye poke a dude 4 times, you got to have a point taken. However, he still won 30-27 on all 3 scorecards. So even with the point deduction, he would have won. That's kind of my thoughts on the eye poke. If you're going to decision, Weidman should have won. It should not be a TKO. If you're going to rule it a no contest, I think that's fine. But I want to get away from that and just talk about how impressive this was for Chris Weidman. I imagine that most fans out there were rooting for Chris Weidman in this fight. Unless you're like Bruno Silva's family or like from Brazil, it's probably tough to root against Chris Weidman with just everything he's gone through. The dude's been a world champion, ended the reign of Anderson Silva, defends the title a few times, then is kind of, up and down, has just the gruesome leg break. There's talk about it being amputated. He has a million surgeries. He comes back against Brad Tavares, just gets the legs chewed up. It was not a fun watch. Heading into this fight, I was very concerned. You don't want to see the leg get injured. You don't want to see him get knocked out. Bruno Silva's a dude with some serious knockout power. 20 KOs in his career. But Weidman really did look great. He clearly won the 1st round. Round 2 was competitive, and then it seemed like he hurt Bruno Silva towards the end of it. I think he won that round. He didn't even really need to take him down. Bruno Silva had some pretty solid takedown defense. He was landing on the feet. So overall, I think the eye pokes are probably going to kind of cloud this one, but I really do just want to give Chris Weidman his flowers. The fact that he was able to come back, period, and be able to even train MMA is crazy from that leg injury. Not only is he just training and being active, he is winning, competing with a dude right outside the top 15. So shout out to Chris Weidman. If he wants to keep fighting, I think he looked good enough where you got to respect it. Hopefully they give him, some decent matchups. Don't need to throw him to the wolves at this point in his career, but just shout out to Chris Weidman. Very impressive performance. Then we had another fight with some controversy. Ruziboev with a pretty, suspect knockout where he eye pokes Dumas. Dumas kind of grabs his eye, turns, tries to find the ref. Ruziboev, I guess not necessarily his fault, just continues to fight, ends up finishing Cedric Dumas. So once again, not a great look. There was an eye poke missed. I don't know if that's going to end up turning into a no contest. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Ruziboev said he hit him with the fist. That's not what the replay looked like. And then actually before that one, never a great sign when you have 3 fights in a row with some sort of referee issue. But we had the Kyle Nelson round 1 knockout. A lot of people thought it was an early stoppage. I don't think it was a horrible stoppage. I do think it probably was a little bit early. Overall, it was kind of just a weird situation because you had Bill Algeo, who was clearly rocked. He was shaky legs, doing the chicken dance, his physical, like the way his body reacted to the shots was terrible. It seemed like he was ready to go down at any point. His legs were just all over the place. He was noodle legging it. But it seemed like mentally he was still very there. Like he was, trying to throw back. He was waving him on. He was giving you signals that he was fine. So it was like the bottom half looked awful, but then the top half, it looked like he was still somewhat there. I would have liked to see the ref let it go just a little bit longer. Like if he would have hit the deck, I think you call it right away just based on how hurt he was. But the fact that he was still calling him on, somewhat, trying to throw back, I think it probably was a little bit early. But like Kyle Nelson said in his post-fight, he doesn't control it. He went out there. He did what he did. The fight got stopped, so good win for Kyle Nelson, showcasing that power. And then we got to go to Nate the Train in the UFC, back in the win column here. I don't know if there is a single fan of MMA that is not a fan of Nate the Train. This dude goes out there, he's kill or be killed, he gets in absolute wars, and that's exactly what he did here against Jamal Emmers. He gets hurt. I mean, it might have been like the first 20 seconds he gets dropped. I'm obviously a big fan. I'm like, oh no, like please do not finish him super early on. He takes some more damage, but he battles back and then ends up landing a nasty uppercut on Jamal Emmers, puts him out, lands some vicious ground and pound. Stoppage was pretty late there. Then he gets on the mic, does his thing, Nate the Train in the UFC. You gotta love it. It'll be interesting to see how the UFC match makes for him moving forward. As a competitor, I'm sure he wants to get back into like those top 15 fights. As a fan, I would rather see Nate the Train fight dudes that he's going to just go out there and stand up with and get in these wars. I don't need to see him fighting the top 15 at featherweight, the top 10 personally, right? I don't need to see those matchups. We saw it with Dan Ige. He's not able to be Nate the Train in the UFC when he's in those super, trying to be super technical against those top fighters. I prefer the fun fights, and please get this man on the main card. Nate the Train on the prelims should be a crime. And then let's just run through some of the other fights. I felt like those were kind of like the big storylines on the main card. The only fight, except for the main event, that was not a finish, and then I guess technically the Weidman Silva one. But Chidi and Njokuani beating Reese McKee. Odd game plan from Reese McKee. I feel like the way you beat Chidi is you get him tired. Reese McKee just kind of ended up clinching him, had no success. Chidi gets the win down at 170. Shout out to him. Showcased the improved gas tank. It was a split decision, very odd. I thought it was 30-27. Don't know how Reese McKee got a scorecard there, but not a super notable fight. Virna Jandiroba picking up the win against Loopy Godinez. Did pick Loopy for that one, so I was a little bit surprised, but she pulled it out in the third round. First two rounds were close. Third round was very clearly for Jandiroba. Julio Arce back up at 145, knocking out Herbert Burns. Tough for Herbert Burns. He's been out for a while. Ends up getting finished. Julio Arce did miss weight, but I do think he was coming off an ACL injury, so if he can get the weight together, a fun addition to 145. Dennis Buzukja getting his first UFC win, knocking out Connor Matthews. I think he looked super impressive. He was facing pretty tough competition in his first UFC fights. I think this was a more, favorable or even matchup. Connor Matthews, he's going to get in fun fights, so sure he'll get another opportunity. Ibo Aslan avenging his only loss to Anton Turkalj. Turkalj was making it fun. Seemed like Aslan might have been slowing down, but then he gets hit with a nasty shot. Shout out to the ref there. Very good stoppage. I think some people initially thought it was early, but it seemed like Turkalj had no idea what happened once he hit the deck. And then one of the strangest knockouts I've ever seen with Andre Petrosky, like shooting a shot. The broadcast didn't mention it. Jacob Malkoun landed I think it was a slight left that grazed the top of Petrosky's head, and then Petrosky rams into Jacob Malkoun's hip bone. I don't know what happened. The way he reacted, it was like he got hit to the body. He hits the deck. Malkoun lands a nasty body kick, where he's huddled over. Malkoun kicks him, lands the follow-up shots. Very weird situation. Haven't seen a knockout like that, I don't think, ever. And then we had Kalen Loughran winning the first fight of the night by unanimous decision. So that was the card. Overall, some fun fights here, some solid finishes, decent main event with Fiorot beating Aaron Blanchfield. We have one more fight next week back at the Apex before UFC 100. Just one more week to get through that. And then we are on to pretty much the best card of all time on paper. So let me know your guys' thoughts on this card. Also, later on today, I'm going to be posting my predictions for the fight night next Saturday. So check that out if you are interested. But thank you all for stopping by. I will see you in the next one.